Hello, it's Jess. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is an extremely overdue wrap up. I have 3 months of books to talk about in this video. Everyone, this is Echo. If you are new here, he is my 11-year-old senior dog, and apparently he wants to hang out with us today. He will probably jump down, but yeah, here he is. Hi, baby boy. Hi. Get yourself a drink or a snack. I'm going to try to talk about these books as fast as possible because I have so many to talk about today. I'm just gonna jump in here and start yapping because otherwise this video is gonna be 2 hours long. Like I said, I haven't done a wrap up in 3 months. Full disclosure, I actually read a lot more books than you see today, but due to some things going on in my life, I had a small medical procedure and I also started some anxiety medication, and the first week of that medication absolutely annihilated me. So there were some vlogs that got pushed all the way to October. There are actually more books that I read, but these are the ones that we're going to talk about today. Let's get going. I'm going to start with the books that I read on my Kindle. First up, I read The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchinson. This is an adult thriller, and I do want to make it very clear, please check content warnings. If you want to check this one out, it was rough. This is a thriller about a man who kidnaps women and he takes them and he keeps them and does horrific things. This was a really interesting thriller because when you come into the story, this isn't a spoiler, this is like chapter 1. It's actually after they have found and rescued the girls that this man kidnaps, and you are in the police station with one of the girls and she is telling her story, and we kind of go back and forth between the police station and this girl's actual story. This thriller was really intriguing for me because I think it has a lot to say about, first of all, how we treat victims, and also when are people both victims and perpetrators of crimes, because that is definitely something that has happened, and that is kind of what the police are trying to figure out. The girl that they are interviewing, she is looked at by the other girls that have been kidnapped as a leader. They all turn to her and all the other girls are refusing to speak until they get permission from this other girl. And so the police are kind of wondering how complicit are you in these crimes? And I think that it is really interesting how they treat her versus what we as the reader know. And it is definitely at times very infuriating how they treat her. I think this book also has a lot to say about how we view victims and the perfect victim type of mentality, especially when the victim is a woman, and how we expect them to act and behave in a certain way when in reality no one is going to act a certain way based off of a formula when they're exposed to trauma. I had originally gave this book 3.5 stars because it was heading to be a 4-star the whole way, but the entire time we're in this book, they're kind of teasing this reveal that's gonna happen, and when you finally get to the reveal, you're just what? Okay, whatever. Sure. And it's not honestly that I need reveals to necessarily be earth-shattering. I don't need crazy plot twists. But this one, I was that's what you're giving me? That's so odd. And at the time I was reading, I was whatever, it's fine. But I was a little bit disappointed. But now that I've had some time since then, I've actually kind of come to appreciate that even though maybe narratively wise the plot twist was a letdown, that thematically I think the plot twist actually added a lot to it. So I might go back to Goodreads and bump up the rating to 4 stars. If you are okay with some super dark content, I do recommend this thriller. I did think it was really interesting, but again, check your content warning. Next up, I read the new release in the Royals of Forset. This is also available on Kindle Unlimited, and I want to make it clear, this is not a recommendation for this series. I have eaten up this entire series. I don't really believe in guilty pleasures, but if I did, this kind of would be a guilty pleasure. But I want to make it clear This is not me recommending this series. If you like dark romance books, you're probably already familiar with this and you probably already know what you want. This is super popular within the dark romance. I believe this book is book 10 in the series, and I'm gonna be real, I remember that it's like barons of something, but I like don't even remember what the adjective is. They're all like a title of some depressing word in the whole series. This is a series that is connected trilogies, and so like you do have to read them in order, but this is book 1 in the Baron series, and I want to make it clear this series is dark, and this series is also a bully romance, which, to be honest, I really never thought that I would like, but for some reason it does work for me in this series. And I also want to make it very, very clear, first of all, again, check your content warnings because this is a dark romance, but I want to make it especially and explicitly clear this is a series that all of the books contain dubious consent, and some of the books also contain non-con scenes. I just want to make it clear, if you pick up this series, you are in for a ride and you might not enjoy it. Like I said, this is book 10 in this series and they are connected trilogies. And so kind of the premise of this series is that in this town, there is a university, and basically the crime lords of the town have kind of separated the town into like districts, regions, whatever, and all of the crime lords are in charge of different types of crimes, and they use the college fraternity system as a recruitment ground. And so all of the trilogies feature 3 men who are the leaders of the fraternities on the college and 1 girl. Originally, this series was actually written by 2 authors, and this is the first book that's only written by one of the authors, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if I'm gonna continue this series. Now, I mean, I still rated it 3 stars, but I just felt like there was something missing. One of the things that I liked about this series is that each character felt so distinct. It is multiple POV, and when I was reading a chapter, I did not need the authors to tell me what character I was reading from. I could instantly tell, oh, this is this character, because their chapters felt so distinct. Every single character throughout the entire series, all the way through book 9, they felt distinct and like they were a real person. A real bad person, like this is not morally gray, this is morally black. These are bad dudes. But I felt like all of the characters were distinct, and in this book, I felt like that was missing, and so I gave the book 3 stars, but I'm not really sure if I'm gonna continue this series. But I also just like didn't necessarily feel the chemistry between the love interests either. Despite the fact that this series is quite dark and questionable, I never ever once doubted the chemistry between the main female character and the love interest, plural. It's 3 stars. It is what it is. Take me talking about this as what it is. The last book that I read on my Kindle that I want to talk to you about is A Lancer by Jane Washington. This is a dance turn, so I'm quite sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but whatever. I did no preparation for this video because I suck. This is book 6 in a series. This is also a Why Choose. It's a fantasy romance with like a dash of dystopian in it, and I rated this entire series between 3 and 4 stars, with like the latter books in the series definitely being higher rated. I could definitely see the growth of the author throughout the series. This is one that is quite slow burn, which I like, and it's also very, very entertaining. I think that's one of the major selling points, that this is just like a really entertaining series. This is a series that follows this gifted community, and basically the like dash of dystopian but like also fantasy is that the author, and I actually looked up like on her website what she has to say about this series. Basically, she says that this series is not Omegaverse, but that she did pull things from the Omegaverse. So I guess you could say it's like Omegaverse light. Basically, in this dystopian United States, a small minority portion of the population is gifted. And what that means is they're ranked from Sigma all the way up to Alpha, and they sometimes have extra gifts. Sometimes it's like strength, there's someone who can like see the future, like all sorts of like special powers that they have. But they are very much the minority of the population, and they are very, very oppressed. As like a part of this society, there is also this performing arts school that accepts like portions of this gifted community. Not all of them, but portions of the community from across the country can attend this academy. Everything that they need is taken care of at the academy, but they're also under constant surveillance, and they're in this competition 24/7. Every year at this academy, of the graduating class, they choose one idol, and that idol basically gets some type of contract. Because this population is gifted and has like special powers, usually those powers lend them to some type of celebrity status, whether it's like a professional athlete, professional singer, some type of performer, dancer. And the main character of this series is a dancer, which I liked. I don't really know anything about dance, so I don't know how accurate it is, but like I thought it was very interesting. And then basically, if you graduate and you're not chosen to like win that year, if you're not the idol, you go back to living in poverty. Our main character is a Sigma, which is like the lowest. She is physically smaller, weaker, and then like Alpha is the top. And also Alphas usually have like the best supernatural gifts, whereas like all of the Sigmas that have ever existed all have the same gift, which is empathy. Like I said, this is a Why Choose romance series. I think it was a little much in this series because the main character has 10 romantic partners. The author also uses like the soulmate trope, and I actually really like what she did with it. This is a situation where like there are soulmates going on, and it is like a magical connection. But the way the author did this soulmate trope, I really like. She subverted the trope quite a bit. It did feel pretty fresh compared to some of the other things that I've read. But I will say that I think 10 was too many. Now here's the thing, in real life, have however many partners you want, as long as everybody is informed, consenting adults. But the issue is that like in a book, you only have so many pages. And even though this is a 6-book series, I felt like because there were so many love interests, there were a few of them, like probably 4, that did feel quite flat. And I honestly think that she should have just cut it down and like absorbed those character traits into some of the other love interests, and it would have made everyone feel a lot more well-rounded and more realistic. But that being said, like I did like the love interests, especially the 6 that I felt that were more developed. But what I really like about this series is what it has to say in terms of exploitation. Like I said, this campus is under 24-hour surveillance, and there are live streams going on constantly, and every week there's like an episode that everyone globally on this dystopian earth watches. So this series has a lot to say about like reality television and like people's perception and how that influences, and like how much of yourself do you give to like the public. You have to remember that like all of these gifted adults, like even though they're adults at this performing arts school, they are still being exploited, and they're still being like very heavily controlled and oppressed. And so it's about these characters learning how to operate and how to succeed under these circumstances. The series also has some things to say about capitalism and oppression and stuff like that, which I did like. Honestly, I do wish that we would have gotten more into the world building earlier in the series, because I think that if the earlier books in the series got more into the like surveillance and the exploitation factors, then I think that we could have done more with that, both commentary wise and plot wise. At the end of the day, I did really enjoy this. I think if you're a fan of like reality TV and also of Survivor, which I know is reality TV, but like also of the Hunger Games, which like don't like people are not being killed. Well, I mean, like, some people die, but like, this is not like the Hunger Games style competition where the contestants are killing each other. But I think if you read the series, you'll know why I bring up the Hunger Games. So I think if you like the Hunger Games, reality television, and Survivor specifically within reality television, and you also really like fantasy romance, then I think you could really enjoy this series. And I'm actually considering getting a copy of all 6 books for my shelf. Next up, I'm going to talk about the books that I have vlogs for, so we're going to make this ultra super fast. I have an over hour-long vlog where I read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping, which are the 2 prequel novels for the Hunger Games. If you want to know my thoughts about that, I'll just say I rated Ballad 4 stars and Sunrise 5 stars. Sunrise made me cry twice, so that was a very fun experience for me. Both of these books are super popular. I don't need to explain them to you, and if you want to know all my individual thoughts about these books, check out that vlog because I literally don't shut up for over an hour. So enjoy. Next up, I also have a vlog for The Legend of Maneka by Kritika H. Rao. This is a fantasy romance. I gave this book 4 stars and I really enjoyed it. And like, honestly, if you're gonna buy one book that I recommend in this video, like, I want it to be this one because I think this book is so underrated. This is Maneka's story. Yes, it is a fantasy romance, but I don't want to recommend this as a fantasy romance. I want to recommend this as if you want a coming of age story, like an adult coming of age story, not a teenage one. But you're following Maneka, who is a celestial dancer. She dances to weave illusions for Indra, the god of heaven, as a way to seduce people who are threats to his power. And the story of this is that she is sent out to seduce this human sage who just is undermining Indra and is gaining too much power. It is a romance. I'm not going to pretend like it's not. However, what this book really is Maneka learning about herself and coming into her own power. This book honestly felt so spiritual. It felt so fresh, and honestly not like any other fantasy romance that I've read, which is why I don't even want to recommend it as a romance. I want to recommend it as, do you want to read an introspective story about a woman who is just into her first years of adulthood and is learning about herself. She's learning about her place in the world. She's learning about her powers. She's learning that perhaps the things that she has been told her entire life are maybe not exactly true. She is learning about both how beautiful love is and also the cost of love. This book also has a lot to say about loving people in spite of their flaws, and also how much can someone hurt you and you're still willing to love them. And I think that it's honestly just a really, really beautiful story. And if all of that is interesting to you and you also want to find out about the romance, then that's fine. But again, I don't recommend this as a romance. I recommend it as a very introspective story of a woman learning and claiming her power and standing up. Again, I do have a vlog that is dedicated just to this book, so if you want to know more of my thoughts, go check it out, but I gave this 4 stars. Next up, I also have a vlog for Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna Van Veen. This is an adult horror novel, and again, I rated this 4 stars. I think that this is fantastic. So this is a story that follows twin sisters, and one sister is sick and the other sister goes to try to help because she doesn't want her sister to be sent to a sanatorium. This is a historical horror, and yeah, her sister starts being hungry for some things. If you like horror and you like gothic stories, then I definitely recommend this. It was very gothic, it was very atmospheric, and it was gross. It was nasty. And you know, like, that's a good thing in a horror. Like, I like a gross horror book. So yeah, if you're intrigued by that, I definitely recommend it. And again, I do have a vlog just dedicated to this book that you can check out. Now we're gonna talk about 3 months worth of book club books. So first, first up, I finished the library trilogy with The Book That Held Her Heart by Mark Lawrence, and this is a mega disappointment. So this is a series where you follow two characters in the first book, and like the cast does sort of expand, but you follow a woman and a man who are in this magical library. In the first book, you're basically just kind of like figuring out how their stories align. The library is very fascinating, very magical. Unfortunately, in this series, the first book was my favorite and it has kind of gone downhill. I gave this book 2.5 stars. I think there are two reasons why this book didn't work for me. Basically, when this series starts, it's about this magical library, and really what it's about is the themes of the story, which is the cycles of violence that humans perpetrate on each other. And then it also talks about knowledge and how attainable should knowledge be, where it's like if you have every question answered and you don't have to like work to attain the knowledge, then it's kind of like you end up with guns bigger than you should have and you don't really understand the ramifications type of deal. You know what I'm saying? Basically the argument of like how accessible should knowledge be, from like one extreme where it's like no, you got to figure it out 100% on your own, to the other extreme of give everybody all of the knowledge that they could ever possibly want. And honestly, thematically, that is very, very interesting. There were moments in this series where I was like, hell yeah, absolutely Mark Lawrence. It's hard to talk about, but by the time we get to book 3 in this series, you can tell that Mark Lawrence has been influenced by current events, specifically the rise of fascism, which is just such a fun, I love living through historical times. It's so fun. And here's the thing, on one hand, Mark Lawrence very, very loudly stands up and says, fuck fascism. And for that, I am so endlessly grateful. However, the issue is that when we get to book 3 in this series, Mark Lawrence is biting off more than he can chew thematically. Especially because books 2 and 3 are much shorter than book 1 in this series. So there's less page count to explore these themes. I don't disagree with anything he's saying here, but in terms of like a book, I think that he was just cooking too hard and he ended up a little bit thematically with a mess in this series. So even though I agree with everything he says about how bad fascism and authoritarianism is, I really think he just should have stuck with the themes that he put in book 1. The point that he was making thematically could have been so much more nuanced and so much stronger if he would have stuck to the original themes instead of kind of changing them. And like honestly, the themes of like the cycles of violence and fascism and all of that, those are connected topics. So it's not like it's unreasonable for them to be themes within the same series, but it just was not fully developed to a point where it would be satisfying and impactful. The other reason that this one was the lowest rated is there is a romance in here, and we kind of find out something about the romance, and I'm not even gonna say what it is, but I found it icky and I felt like it kind of undermined the romance over the course of the whole series, and I didn't like it. On the flip side of that, I read books 1 and 2 in the Chorus of Dragons by Jen Lyons, and I'm obsessed with this series. It's so good. Sometimes you just find an author and their writing style just clicks with you, and that's what this series is. This is an adult epic high fantasy series. I rated book 1 4.5 stars. Book 2, I actually did like a little bit less, and we'll talk about that. So I rated it 4 stars. Still love it, still obsessed. It honestly has like a little bit of everything. It's so fascinating. But in book 1, we are getting Kieran's story, and it's told through 2 parts. In the beginning of the book, we find out that Kieran is in prison, and he is being held in prison by this mimic named Talon. Mimics in this can eat your brain and then assume your personality and look like you and all that. Like, I love the idea of having characters that are mimics. There's so many possibilities. Okay, I need to make this fast. Every other chapter in this book is told from Kieran, and then every other chapter is told from Talon. But the thing is both sides of the story are still Kieran's story. Talon is just telling a different part of Kieran's story based off of memories and thoughts that she has sucked up from other people. Kieran was adopted by this old man who is a musician, and he trained Kieran, and the two of them perform in a brothel, and they live in a brothel in the slums of the capital city of this empire. Kieran is also a very prolific thief who is part of this like magical thieving society, which is extra fun. And then one day we find out that Kieran is actually the bastard son of one of the royal families in the city, and so they claim him and they bring him to their palace. There's like a bunch of different royal families and train him and all of that stuff. At a certain point, he is gonna be kidnapped and sold into slavery. So that's kind of the setup of the book, and then we go from there. There's magical creatures in here. There are literal gods that do interfere with the mere mortals. There is a rebellion brewing. There are prophecies. The rebellion is because this capital city, like, they are imperialist shitlords, and you know, people don't like that. There's assassins, as you can tell by the cover and the fact that this is book 1 in the Course of Dragons. There are dragons, and then as the story goes on, we start to learn some secrets that may have been lost to the ages, which is one of my favorite things in fantasies. I love it when people 1,000 years ago just absolutely messed everything up for people in the present day. It's just such a fantastic series. I had such a good time. Now, I will say that this is very interesting from a creative point of view in that the dual timelines are told by different characters, but it's all this one person's story, and so you're going back and forth constantly. For me, it worked so well. I loved the back and forth, but I will say that most of the negative reviews for this first book are because people didn't jive with the way the story was told and the narrative design, and I think that that's very valid. Not every narrative design is going to work for everybody. So maybe give this like, I don't know, like 5-ish chapters before you decide whether you want to read it. But if it works for you, oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. Now, book 2 in this series is actually the same timeline. It is just a different character's story of what was going on her timeline while Kieran was dealing with everything that happened in book 1. First of all, I like Janelle as a character more than I like Kieran as a character. However, I think that Janelle's storyline was just less engaging for me. Kieran's has like assassins and thieves and like all of this like magical stuff that I just really enjoyed. It really clicked with me. The plot in this one was just something I preferred personally, and so I think that's why I did not enjoy book 2 as much as I enjoyed book 1. Also because at the very end of book 1, there's like an explosive action type sequence that happens and like big things are happening in this world. Then to go back in time and learn Janelle's story from the past up to the present day, there was a part of me that was like, get to the present day because the world's gonna end. And so there was this like anticipation that in the back of my mind, I was just like, okay, let's get to it. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. And so I did think that hindered my enjoyment in book 2, but I mean, not enough that I didn't also love it. And I do love Janelle as a character. She is fantastic. I love her so much. I also read Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I gave this 4 stars. This is an adult thriller, and this is probably one of the most horrendous thrillers I've ever read. Please look up content warnings before you go into this. I mean, Karen Slaughter is known for writing dark thrillers, and to be honest, in like the first third of the book, I was like, oh, this is like basically on par with her other thrillers that I've read. And then I was like, no, it's not. This is horrendous. Basically, we're following this woman and she is estranged from her sister and her husband dies. And then over the course of dealing with the post-death bullshit that you have to deal with when someone dies, she finds some videos on his computer that are very disturbing, and it leads her down the rabbit hole. Like I said, I gave this 4 stars and it is horrendous, but I mean, it's a really great thriller. It is. It's a really good thriller. I'm a fan of Karen Slaughter, but please please, before you pick up any of her books, look up like a full list of content warnings, because this one was rough. I also don't recommend starting here. Please do not make this your first Karen Slaughter. Try one of her more mild novels first, because this one is hard. Next up, I read City of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is book 1 in the Tyrant Philosopher series. This is an adult fantasy novel. There is this conquering empire. They are known as the Palatine, and we are now in this city where they are occupying it. They have been occupying it for 3 years, and things are sort of on the cusp of a revolution. This book has a lot to say about imperialism and colonization and oppression, and I loved all the commentary in here. This is a book that I like intellectually. I don't know exactly how to make this make sense to you. I wasn't necessarily like emotionally engaged with this book, and I will say that it was a little bit difficult for me to get into. The entire first half of the book, every single chapter is from a different POV, and so you're just thrown into like all of these little vignettes about these different people who are living in this occupied city, and they're all from different factions within the city. We've got this priest who is like the last priest of this religion that's about to die because the Palatine have basically eradicated all of the original religions of this city and every other city that they're a part of. We have a lady who runs an inn. We have some people that work within like the industrial part of the city. We have some people that work within the criminal enterprises of the city. We have a couple of characters that are students at this university. We have a couple of characters that are like leftover aristocracy from before the occupation. And we also get the POV of a couple of the people that are part of this occupation that are, you know, part of this conquering empire. I just absolutely, I love the commentary. I love seeing all of the different factions in here. You know, you've got characters that are working together sometimes and then opposing each other at other times. You've got people making like secret deals. There's demons in here. From an intellectual point of view, this book is fascinating. It's so intriguing, but I will say, because there are so many characters and each chapter is just like a little vignette into these different characters, I didn't really get emotionally invested in any one character's story, but I was fascinated enough by this city and all the different moving political factions that I did want to keep reading. It was a little bit difficult to get into this book because you are just like plopped down into the world, and because you change perspectives so many different times, it is harder than I would say the average adult fantasy to get into the story. But once you're into the story, it is well worth it. Even though I wasn't like super emotionally invested in any one character, they did by the end, they felt very real to me, and every single character in this book is flawed. They are selfish. Sometimes you want to just shake them and be like, can't you see the bigger picture? And they're like, no, I can't, because I'm a flawed, selfish person and I'm working for my own motivations. And those motivations change throughout the novel. It's really fascinating. If you like dense fantasy that is very political, that is about revolution, then I definitely recommend this series. It's well worth checking out book 1.